and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, happy to have you on because I know that you have your own podcast, and sometimes it's nice just to take a little break from being on your own podcast and hop on someone else's show. It's nice to be in the other seat from every once in a while. What is because your podcast is pretty good. Most podcasts don't make it past like what episode like 9 or 10, and you've done like 500 episodes. So, what is the Growth Now movement podcast about for anyone that hasn't stumbled across it yet?
Yeah, man. I think the statistic is 78% of shows don't make it past their first 7 episodes, which is just absolutely mind blowing to me. Now, obviously, being in the podcast space as a podcaster, as you know, I own a company in the podcast space, and I've done some other things in podcasting. I'm not surprised, right? I think a lot of people they think they hit record and thousands of people will show up and listen, and that's just not the case. And so I always like to say, hey, dampen your expectations. But the reality is, I started 9+ years ago recording episodes, and to kind of put that in context, when I would tell people back then I had a podcast, they would go, "What's a podcast?" And now the response is they roll their eyes and they go, "Oh God, you have one too," right? Like because so many people have started them and stopped them and rebranded them and launched them again, and now all the celebrities are in the game, and it's just a different world. But the Growth Now movement started with an idea. Originally, I was like, I'm gonna interview entrepreneurs, pick their brain, figure out how to be a better entrepreneur. Because at this point, I had 3 failed businesses. I was still in corporate, but had 3 failed businesses on the side. And I was like, clearly, I'm doing something wrong here. So let me interview entrepreneurs. And what ended up happening was 6 months before I launched the show, my mom lost a 20-year battle to opioids. And it really kind of rocked my world in so many different ways, and really kind of had me reflect on what is life all about. Why am I chasing entrepreneurship? Why am I chasing money? Why am I chasing things and cars and houses and girls and all these things that society said I should chase? And honestly, what happened was I started having these interviews with people that were just real and open and vulnerable, and asking them questions like, how do you find self-love? How do you overcome adversity? Tell me about your rock bottom moment and how you were able to still move forward, even though all signs pointed to failure. And I think the vulnerability of that, especially over the first 2 years, I always jokingly say that every question was for me. I shouldn't say jokingly, it's the truth, right? I was trying to figure some stuff out. And I think because of that and the real authentic version of those conversations, that's why the show took off. And about 2 years in, Inc. magazine listed my show as a top 8 podcast every entrepreneur should follow. 360,000 people read that article, and it changed my life. People started tuning in from all over the world. People started asking me to speak at their events and their corporations, and it really kind of presented a great opportunity for me to spread my mission and my message and my purpose, and just feel really blessed now, 9 years later, still being able to sit down with incredible people, pick their brain, and figure out how they navigate life, and it's just been a true blessing.
It sounds like you had a child's mentality with it. You were generally and like really curious to learn from other people's experiences versus a lot of people are starting a podcast because it's something that, like you said, a lot of people want to do because they think it's going to lead to like brand deals or money and fame. However, if you go back and listen to the first Joe Rogan podcast, I think it was just like him and like a friend on like a phone. Like literally it was terrible, but he just likes chatting. And I believe if you really like something, uh, regardless of the outcome, just do it and see what happens, rather than having a expectation. Once you start setting expectations on things, it makes life not as bright.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between, expectations and strategy, right? So, like when we have an expectation on something or someone, we expect a certain response or a certain outcome. We can certainly be beaten down. Like I always say, like your goals are very important for direction, but we can't tie our worth to that goal. Um, and finding the joys within podcasting. I'm fortunate enough that I've grown an audience over time. But even if you have 100 people listening, I always say to people, look, like, think about, if there was a room full of 100 people, would you show up every week? The answer is going to be yes every single time. As a matter of fact, you probably pay for your plane ticket, pay for your hotel room just to get in that room and talk to those people. But we can't hit record for those 100 people. And so, as far as like expectations, I mean, I didn't know what to expect. 9.5 years ago, podcasting wasn't really a thing. And 100% the childish mentality, or the child mentality of curiosity. I still say to this day, curiosity is a superpower. If you walk into the room and think you know everything, you're not going to walk around or you're not going to walk out of that room a better person. And so I believe showing up with the expectation of giving, with the expectation of making an impact, instead of how many people am I impacting, how many people are going to hire me or want to work with me. I think that changes the game as far as how often you show up. And I'm honored to say, like, I've shown up almost every single Tuesday for the last 9+ years. Oh, you're frozen on me. Hello. What happened there, man? Are you with me?
Yeah, have no idea what happened, but that's what
Oh, hold
happens
on.
with
Now
podcasts
now
sometimes.
my hold on. The hell?
All right, we made it back.
You're not coming in through my AirPods. Hold on 1 second. They're connected. All right, let's try this one more time. I'm going to log out and log right back in. Hold on.
Okay, no worries. I know you've had this happen before too.
Let's try again. Say something.
Hello?
I don't know why my AirPods aren't connecting to this website. By the way, I've met the guys from Riverside. They claim this is the best, and whenever I use Riverside, it doesn't work properly. I don't know why.
You can't hear me at all then.
No, I can hear you through the computer. Let's just do that. We'll do that. There's no echo, right? You can't hear yourself back.
No, you're good.
Cool. This will be a hoot for you to edit.
I probably will just do my best. That's all you can do. Anyway.
That's it, man. Just cut out the part where I ripped up the Riverside guys.
No, like I actually was using Riverside. I had so many issues that I stopped. I was just like, this is silly. Like, I don't know why I'm paying for this. So I just was using Zoom and I have no issues with Zoom. And then the quality on Zoom for some reason, like I had to go through the back end to make it like higher quality, but like the video wouldn't be very good for some reason. So I went back to Riverside and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It literally said like their VPN system wasn't coming through.
Well,
Because
fingers crossed we'll do this. If not, we'll
I
have to
didn't lose
reschedule
it.
because I do have a hard stop at 11:45. So
Yeah, so we'll make it there. So, but yeah, my internet didn't go out. I was like, uh-oh. But I was like, man, if anyone understands this calamity, it's Justin.
dude, technology is our greatest friend and our worst enemy, right?
I know. So essentially, you're doing the Growth Now podcast for you to learn why your three businesses were failing to gain insights to other people who had been successful. What was the businesses like? What was the first one, second one, third one?
Yeah. So the first one was I had a business partner. We put together live in-person events for business owners, mostly local, right? And so we bring in speakers and we talk about marketing, or we talk about entrepreneurship, or we talk about customer service, or, all these different things. And we ended up doing the first ever nonprofit expo in our area, and it was very successful. And we're like, well, let's do this for businesses. And we ended up paying a speaker a ton of money to come speak at the event. Bill, if you don't remember his name, or this guy, his name was Bill Rancic. He won the first season of The Apprentice. So at the time, it was very like, it made sense. Most people don't know who he is now. Made most of his money in real estate, et cetera. Him and his wife ended up having a reality show. But we ended up selling 3 tickets to the event. And so we ended up losing all of our money. and we never hosted the event. And so we decided to shut the doors on that one. And I said, I'll never do live events again. Of course, I now do live events based off of my podcast. The second thing we decided to build an app, which back then was really difficult. This wasn't like now you can go on our website and say, build this app for me, and it gets built for you. Back then it was hiring designers and, creators and all these other people, graphic designers. And so it was a pricey thing, and it never ended up launching, just because of the expense that went into it and all the things in between. And then the third thing was actually the first business that took off for me, but it failed the first time, which was a podcast production company, helping people on the back end, to do the back end work for them, to edit their shows, to do all that stuff. And that ended up failing. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't working out. I need to find a way to do this better. And so that business ended up being the catalyst for me to make money right off the gate of me being a full-time entrepreneur. And I was able to build that and exit that, and then move into some other things as well. Like right now I still own a company called Pod Brand. We create social media content for podcasters. And then obviously I host a mastermind for entrepreneurs and all these other things. But a lot of it is opportunity and then the correct responses, right? I'm not saying there weren't other businesses that failed along the way since success, but it was about, understanding, utilizing your resources, and most importantly, surrounding yourself with the right people through the journey. People that understand where you're at, what you're trying to build, people who push you, people who cheer you on, people who support you through that process. And that was really the biggest piece missing if I had to put it all together through those first three businesses. Plus I was a young man versus now an old man. And we learn how to navigate that. But yeah, I think that's probably the main piece, is like I needed to surround myself with people that were a sounding board, people who were my front line, who, when I hit a snag, hey, what do I do here? How do I work through it? How do I not collapse when everything isn't going my way? And just was really blessed to be able to build that support system over time and make sure I had the right people. And that's kind of the biggest catalyst for me.
How are you supporting yourself through that time? Like, what were you doing?
Yeah. So, I think for me, there was a number of things, right? Like obviously I was going through the pain of losing my mom at the same time as I was trying to build a business. And so I think that again, it was about surrounding myself with the right people. And for me, I have 5 specific people who play 5 specific roles. And I'm actually currently writing a book about this, which is essentially the 5 people you need in your life. And so it's the cheerleader. This is the person that cheers you on, the person who, when you have an idea, you call them and you go, hey, I think this is $1 million idea. And at the end of the phone call, they go, Justin, this is $1 billion idea because you're at the helm, right? That person who makes you feel like you can run through a brick wall. The second person is your bruiser, the person who's willing to ask you the tough questions, who's willing to guide you in a way that questions your moves versus just supports them because they love you, right? The person who pushes you in the right direction. Now, I want to be clear about the bruiser. This is not an abuser. It's a bruiser. It's somebody who truly loves you deep down, and they're coming from a good place and they want you to succeed. The third person is your softie. The softie is the person who, when things don't go your way, when you fail, when you stumble, because especially in entrepreneurship or even just in life, you're bound to fall at some point. But this is the person that is the shoulder to cry on. But their key role is helping you get back up. They're not going to allow you to stay in that place for a long period of time, but they'll let you get it out, right? They'll let you mope. They'll let you cry about it. The fourth person is a mentor. Now, I look at mentor a little bit differently. I believe a mentor is somebody who has something innate inside of them that you want more in you. So, like, my mentor was never in podcasting. But I have a mentor right now. His name's Fabio Viviani. A lot of people may know him from the show Top Chef. I have no desire to be a chef. I have no desire to run $300 million worth of restaurants every single year. But he's the biggest giver I know. He's somebody who's willing to show up to give you the shirt off his back, even though he has no skin in the game. And I want to be more of that. I feel like I'm a big giver now, but I want to do it more. And then the fifth person is a coach. I believe at any given time, you should have a coach that's helping you through whatever process. And I don't care, somebody you pay, by the way, this is a coach, right? It's like I'm financially invested in my future. And that could be a coach in your health. That could be a coach in your relationship, spirituality, business, whatever. But you should be paying somebody to help push you forward in life, right? Like, so at that time, my paid coach was somebody who was a spiritual and relationship advisor, because I felt like that was a really weak point in my life. And she helped me navigate a number of things and helped open my eyes to so much. I also paired that with a therapist as well. So again, building your team of people who support you, right? If you look at that from a business standpoint, it's your lawyer, it's your financial advisor, it's your accountant. It's these types of people who kind of piece the right people into place, who help push you forward. But that kind of helped me get through those moments of like those months where I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay my rent this month, right? And we all have those experiences as an entrepreneur, and if you haven't, you're one of the few. And so making sure that I was in the right room, having the right conversation, right? Like I remember my podcast had taken off, but my business hadn't. So people were asking me
Mhm.
to speak at events. And so I was using my day income to get to these events. This is before I got paid to speak. And I remember I got asked to speak at an event down in Orlando. I live in Pennsylvania. And I said yes to the event and then ended up getting fired from my day job. And so it was really, I got to a point where I go, I'm either going to go down to Orlando and speak at this event, or I'm going to pay my rent. Like that was the two options financially. And so I made the smart choice and I decided to fly down to Orlando. And the crazy thing was like that event didn't pay me, right? I didn't get a client from that event. But one of the nights all the speakers went out for a drink and we were sitting around a table and a guy named Mike Kim was sitting to the left of me. And we were just having a conversation and Mike orders the waitress comes up and she goes, "Can I get you guys anything to drink?" And Mike goes, "I'll have this." Right. And it was a $64 glass of scotch. And I'll never remember or I'll never forget because, that was sticker shock. I couldn't believe people were drinking $64 glass of anything. And
Yeah.
they ended up going around the table, and every other person said, "I'll have the same thing." And I was the last person in the circle. And at that time, I felt like I had needed to fit in, and I felt like I needed to play a role. And I gulped, and I was like, I'll have the same thing." And freaking out whether my credit card was going to go through or not. The waitress comes back after our first drink. "Can I get you guys anything else?" Mike goes, "You know what? I'll have one more." And they go around the table, and every single person says, "I'll have one more." So what do? I go, "I'll have one more." Right? You can do the math. We're now at $130 before tip for two drinks. And in my mind, I'm freaking out. Now, Mike ended up paying for everybody's drink. But the important part of this conversation was I the conversation I had with Mike completely changed my mind about entrepreneurship. And I went home and made $22,000 in the next 3 weeks and I never looked back. My entire life changed. And I realized in that moment that when your back is up against the wall, invest in yourself. When your back is up against the wall, get in the room with the right people. When your back is up against the wall, that's when you push forward and do the hard thing and show up to the event and pay your way instead of your rent. And you'll find a way. You will find a way to navigate that life as best you can. And that for me is so key to every single person. Whenever somebody comes to me and says, "You know, I feel really stuck," I ask them what rooms they're in. I ask them what conversations they're having. I ask them with whom are they having those conversations with. We need to make sure these are people that have already built that success for themselves. Those people that have built something that you innately want in yourself, right? Like I have a mastermind of entrepreneurs. We're all impact driven. They all want to make a bigger impact. They all want to grow their income. And that's kind of the thread that ties us all together. But the reality is, I think a lot of them are drawn to me and want to be in my mastermind because now I make more money than I've ever made. And I work 2 to 3 hours a day. And so it's really this gift of like being able to learn from these people that are doing something, not necessarily the same line of work you're doing, but they've built something so unique that you want and asking them the right questions. Going back to that child piece, right? Being curious,
Mhm.
asking the right questions. It's okay not being the smartest person in the room. And that for me has been the winning piece as far as, me scaling and growing and continuing to grow everything I do.
Yeah. So you're I might have just said it at that meeting. I was like, "Oh, I don't drink. I'm just gonna have a water. I'm not a drinker." But
That,
you
by the
took
way,
the
that would have been
opposite
the smarter
approach.
move.
You were freaking.
There's nothing
You're
wrong with saying no. You could have the water, but I was young and not young, but I was like I felt like at that point I had to fit in, right? Like I had this weird thing in my brain where I felt like I had to be the most interesting person in the room instead of the most interested.
Mhm.
And so for me, like that's where I was. But yeah, saying, by the way, if you're broke, get the water.
It'd be like, "Oh, I don't drink," or "I'm doing a sober October or dry January," or think of something.
Yeah.
Uh, However, by ordering that drink, do you believe that's what allowed you and who was it? You said Michael,
Mike,
Mike.
yeah, his name's Mike Kim. Yeah.
So, like, what did he do for you other than showing you and then picking up the tab? You're like, "Oh gosh, yeah, I made the right move here." Like,
Yeah.
what did he tell you or show you, or just being around him? Is that what you feel like allowed you to, run through that brick wall? And it sounds like you're able to pay your rent after. I hope your rent's not 22 grand a month at that point in time.
No, dude, I live in Berks County, Pennsylvania. The rent's never $22,000 a month. But I'll tell you this. It wasn't about me. I could have gotten a water and had the same conversation. It was about saying yes to getting to that event so I could speak at it. so I could be in the room. But the key to that conversation, he just changed my mindset about what entrepreneurship was. He literally said to me, he's like, "What do you do?" I go, "I own a podcast production company." He goes, "Great, you're literally in a business where everybody's fighting to go broke." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Everybody in that business is just cutting each other's costs. And at some point, it's going to get super cheap and you're going to need 10,000 clients in order to pay your bills." He goes, "But you're the only one who's a top 8 podcaster by Inc. magazine. So why aren't you teaching these people and charging for your time uh, on how to do it the right way instead of just doing it for them?" And so I went home and I was like, "Great, let me get in." I knew I had a bunch of connections who they were making good money just from interviewing them on the podcast. And I started to reach out to them and said, "Hey, like you should have a podcast." And they went, "I have no idea how to do that." Right. Especially back then. And I was like,
Yeah.
"Great, I can walk you through it. Here's what the coaching package looks like." And the package, obviously, there was a scale, but averaged about $5,000 a person that I would sit down with. And obviously, terrified to ask for that because I've never asked for that before. But that's where it started. And obviously, grew from there. But it was that mindset shift of like understanding your superpower and what thing you bring that's different than somebody else, and understanding that knowledge is absolutely power. Knowledge can make you money. I didn't realize that at the time because one thing I realized about most entrepreneurs when they start out, they put their blinders on and they sit in their office or their house and they start working. And they're so worried about working, right? Putting in those hours. Oh, today I worked sun up to sundown. I didn't stop at all. I didn't leave my desk. Well, that's where you lost because there was no perspective. There was no perspective from somebody else. There was no like, "Hey, I need to think about this differently." You just think you kind of know what you know. And especially early on, you feel like what I did, you feel like you have to fake it till you make it. And so that to me was such a game changer to be like, no, like I have to take my blinders off. I have to ask the right questions. I have to make sure that I take other people's perspectives, or I'm just going to drive myself broke every single month.
Yeah. You have to figure out who to chat with. And sometimes it's difficult though, is finding the right people because there's just so many people out there now. I mean, when did you start? How long ago was this? 10 years ago? 5 years ago?
It was so when that happened, it was about 8 years ago.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
that event occurred. So, but I've been podcasting slash trying to be an entrepreneur for much longer. I mean, I think my first business I launched, I was 23. I'll be 41 in August. And so, that's coming up on 20 years of trying to figure it out, and 8 years of success. I just wish I knew the power of mentors and getting in the right rooms before, because then I'd be, I would have been an entrepreneur for 15 plus years at this point. So yeah, it was quite a while ago, but I've never stopped wanting more, right? So one thing I do, like I host my own live events, I speak at events, I do all these things, but one thing I started doing was going to other people's events. Right? Why would I do that? I've already got the success. Why am I going to these events that are, $200-300 a ticket? And so the room's a little bit different than the rooms I usually hang out with, because somebody in that room might say something that makes sense to me, or I might connect with one of the speakers who then becomes a friend. Um, Understanding the idea of the true high level networking, in order to continue to surround myself with those people.
Yeah. I've done that a few times and I would go to the events and being that I'm in the financial space, sometimes I'd feel disappointed because people would look at me like, you're too young, especially when you're dealing with like older people that own businesses. What I've learned to understand is if you can get like one little nugget from everything that you do, that's the key versus a lot of people hire a coach and expect him to solve all their problems. If a coach can solve one of your problems, then it's a good investment, even though in the short run it might seem like, hey, this was maybe not worth the money now, but if you can take that one item and compound it over time, then it's worthwhile. However, in the moment, it could feel like, oh crap, why'd I spend money on that?
Yeah, and one thing I encourage people, especially like with you in a niche of like the financial space, is to get out of your lane every once in a while. Find an event that doesn't necessarily have all financial people, right? I have two people in my mastermind who are in the real estate business and they're very successful. And they joined my mastermind because it was people outside of their space, because they were so sick of having the same conversations, right? Like how to get to 100 doors or 300 doors or whatever. And so like I think there's a lot of power too in getting outside of those spaces. Like I'm going to an event in February down in Florida, where there's no speakers. There's no speakers. It's just you know, networking and workshopping, and it's a different approach to an event. But I was like, oh, let me get to that room and see who I can meet. But then what does that lead to? Is that a friendship? Is that a business opportunity? Is that what does that look like? I never go into anything and go, how can I get to this thing and make money? I show up and go, who do I want to know and who do I want to build a relationship with? And that to me has been the game changer for events. Originally, it was like, let me get to this event because they're going to teach me the superpower and how I'm going to make $1 million this year. But now it's like, hey, let me get to an event. Who's going to be there? How can I build that relationship? What's the key component to making sure that I take something away? And then make sure your follow up's good to say, hey, let's hop on a call. We should see how we can support each other. Like, whatever that looks like for you. That to me was also a little piece forward. And I still use that to this day. I'm never afraid to admit that I don't know anything. I don't know everything, and I'm never afraid to admit that I can learn from every single person I interact with. I mean, I have two step kids who are 14 and 12, and I can learn from them every single day if I really wanted to. Like, every single interaction you have is a lesson.
Yeah, I was looking at going to VidCon or something in August, like up in New York. And I was like, I want to tap in more creative side of things because numbers can be very zeros and ones, very binary. Uh, but we're having another kid, so I can't go. But I want to start going to like more creative things and like being around creative people because I feel like if you could be creative and you have a good message and you can practice hopping on a podcast, even if it's only once a week, and at least like looking in the camera, focusing and practicing on your speech, things like that, that's the real golden nugget of podcasting is you get to practice speaking and then watch it back and then like see how you're doing versus back in the day you'd have to get an old camcorder, find some books, stack it on top of some books, press record, run in front of the camera, talk a little, then watch it back on the little screen and it may or may not work, or put it in the VHS and then the VHS gets ruined.
Yeah, I mean, especially today, right? Like, I know the guys who run VidCon, and like when you look at it today, it's like, what what can I learn, right? As an entrepreneur, it's not just old school, like network in your little hometown, get enough clients, do that right thing. Like, it's about content creation. It's about, showing up on the internet to let people know you're the expert. That video might not lead to a client, but it may lead to this prospect of like, let me pay attention to Joshua. Let me pay attention to Justin. Let me see what he's all about. And then down the road, who knows where that could lead, right? And so, like, to show up at events like VidCon or PodFest or whatever the case may be, that from that standpoint, like, those are the little pieces that a lot of people miss, especially in niche markets. Like, for me, I can go to pretty much anything because I'm involved in content creation, I'm involved in business, I'm involved in networking, I'm involved in all that stuff. um, but somebody like you, or even a number of people in my mastermind, I encourage them all the time to go, look, what is not in your zone of genius that you can show up and learn from people, and then also add your value. Because even if you're not the expert in video, which I'm certainly not, by the way, but even if you're not the expert in video or podcasting, you have something to add to every single room you show up to. So how can you add value along with what can I take away here?
Yeah, and it separates you from everyone else because if you're going to a creative space and everyone there's creative and maybe you're not so creative, now you're a little different. And being different could be a good superpower.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I need to go to something. We Our daughter just turned 2. We got another one due in August. So time has been a little
Congratulations, man.
yeah, thank you. So time is a little harder now with more moving pieces. However, I'm not, there's always time for events and things like that. And that's why I like doing this podcast, just having cool people on, chatting. Really no agenda. It's just like, how can we meet people, have a cool convo, post it, and see what happens? Because the worst thing is maybe 100 people see it. But like you said, if 100 people were in a room, how much would you pay to be in that room to talk to those 100 people?
Dude, you're 100% right. And by the way, the piece that people miss so much about podcasting, and I'm so glad you said it because that means you don't miss it, is that this is the greatest networking tool of all time. Like, people don't realize that, like, the podcast is the greatest networking tool that you can ever imagine, right? Like, even if you do one episode a week, right? So that's 52 episodes a year. When you look at it from that standpoint, that's 52 people you wouldn't be able to have any other way to connect to them with, right? Say
Mhm.
it's the CEO of an organization. If you emailed that person and said, hey, I want to pick your brain, they are going to delete your email so quick. But
Oh,
if
they're
you
not going to even
email them and
open
say,
it.
hey, I love what you're doing with your business, Would love to have you on my podcast and talk about some of your strategies. They're going to say yes, right? And then from there, like, who cares if 100 people watch this or not, right? But then you're going to create content that 300 people might see or 1,000 people might see. Like, I had Kurt Angle on my podcast. If you're not familiar, WWE superstar, Olympic gold
Oh yeah.
medalist. So he was on my podcast, and I did the interview with him, and I think 14,000 people downloaded the full episode, right, and listened on audio. But I have one reel. One of the reels with me and him have 114,000 views. That's a big reach. That's 114,000 people that might not know who I am. And all of a sudden, they're like, who is this guy interviewing Kurt Angle? Right. And did similar things with people like Ed Milet and Gabby Bernstein and all these incredible humans, and Burt Kreischer, all these incredible humans that I've been able to sit down and interview. It gives an opportunity to make the bigger impact, right? Like 14,000 is great, but then 110,000 people watch the reel. That's insane. Like, that's a massive reach of people from one 45-second clip or however long it was. And so people miss that piece. And now I can say that I've met Kurt Angle, a childhood hero, a guy I looked up to. And I chatted with him for over an hour, and we had a really great time. And now he's somebody in my Rolodex that I can reach out to if I want, because I'm able to follow up with the interviews and say, hey, man, it was really great talking with you. Would love to stay connected. No ask. I have no ask ever with anybody that I interview, but it leads to a lot of cool things, right? I have an event that some of the speakers are world renowned, and they spoke at my event because I've built that relationship. I have a mastermind that I bring in a guest mentor every single month. That's because I've had this networking tool over the last 9+ years, to sit down and interview them and build those relationships. And I can't tell you how many podcasts I've been on where they interview me. And I would like to say I'm, especially at my level, I'm one of the more connected people in the world. But how many of those individuals don't stay connected with me? I never hear from them again. I might get tagged on a post, but there's no sense of like, hey, how can I build a relationship with Justin? That's always my goal. Not always. I've interviewed some people where I decided I didn't like them after the interview, and we can just let that one just slip right on through. But my goal is always like, how can I build a relationship with this person? And to me, that has changed my life, man. And like my Rolodex, by the way, to young people listening, a Rolodex is the old way we used to keep phone numbers. So my cell phone list is pretty ridiculous, because I've decided to podcast and then later found out it's a great networking tool.
Yeah, you just never know. You invite someone, you're like, hey, I like what you're doing. Hop on a podcast. At least you've spent some time with them. Because so many people out there, when they're starting a business, they're like, how do I make money? How do I make money? How do I make money? Because when you're not making any money, you need the money. And then you think, oh, this is what business is. I got to make money. So who can I squeeze to help me make sure I can pay my rent on time?
No, 100%. And I'll tell those people right now, congratulations, you're in a scarcity mindset, and you have to find out how to become, abundant in your thought process. There's a girl in my mastermind. Her name's Brittany Rogars. Absolutely an incredible human being who I spoke at an event, years ago, like I think it was like 2018, and she saw me speak, and she came up to me afterwards, and she was like, "You were the person I didn't know, and I was least excited to see, but you were my favorite speaker." And now I bought a ticket to your event, which was my first event in 2019. I think that was the timing of it. Anyway, we've stayed connected, and she's always kind of supported me. And I launched my mastermind, and she joined. And my mastermind 6 and 7 figure entrepreneurs. What I didn't know was when she joined, she was making $30,000 a year.
Mhm.
And there's a financial commitment to be in the mastermind, which by the way, most people who are making $30,000 a year, if they heard the financial commitment, they'd fall out of their chair and go, maybe one day I can join. Well, she
Mhm.
signed up. She's now been with the mastermind for 2.5 years, which has been the run of the mastermind itself. I think it was within 12 months, she went from $30,000 a month to $30,000 a year to $30,000 a month.
Hmm.
And that to me is like that piece of like, she was in an abundance mindset. She went, I think I have this really good idea of what I'm building right now. I just don't know what I'm doing. I'm willing to invest in myself now for my future self. And people miss that, especially young entrepreneurs, people who are just trying to piece it together, and they're worried, like you said, worried about getting their next meal. I'll share this really quick, and then I'll let you ask me the next question or wherever we're going. Talk about being a broke entrepreneur. So my podcast took off. I was making no money, and I was like, "What do I need in my life, to sustain myself?" Right? I need food and I need clothes. Obviously, rent too, right? So I needed to make a little bit of money. But I was like, food and clothes, and so I reached out to two companies. One, was Factor. which was a food company that sent food. And I said, hey, I would love for you guys to sponsor my podcast. All I would do it as an exchange for you guys to send me free food every week. They go, that sounds amazing. Let's do it. Lock it in. So they sponsored my show for 8 months. So I had 2 meals a day for free from Factor. And then there was another, I can't remember the name now because it was so long ago, but it was a clothing company that would send me clothes every month in exchange for sponsorship on my show. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty crazy, right? I got resourceful and these extra things that I had to spend money on in order to focus on, okay, now my bills are paid. Now, how can I build abundance above that? And so sometimes it is thinking out of the box and thinking a little bit differently while you're building, but that allowed me to stay more present. And because I wasn't worried about how am I going to afford my next meal, I was worried about how am I going to get my next client? How am I going to get in the right room? How am I going to build that relationship? That's what changed the game for me early on, just getting super creative.
At what point was your podcast at when you asked for those sponsorships?
Yeah, so Inc. Magazine, I was already on Inc. Magazine, but we were
Okay.
probably about 3,500 downloads an episode.
Mhm.
And the show at its peak was doing about 10 on average. And that was probably 2021 was my peak, and it's dipped a little bit since then because what happened in 2021, COVID, it was in 2020. By 2021, all the celebrities hopped on board. And so obviously attention goes elsewhere, but my show is still in the top 0.1% in the world. By the way, that shows perspective of reality of numbers, right?
Yeah.
0.1, I'm in the 0.1% of the world. And to me, that says like just keep going, right? Like I don't care if you have 100 downloads. Like what you have is powerful, and it gives an opportunity for people like me to share a message. And my whole thing is like if I can go on a podcast and change one person's life or say something that makes them look at something a little bit differently, that's all I care about. And so it's a powerful thing to be able to share your voice, and podcasting is just a great way to do it.
Yeah. Even if you're just on there for 3 minutes by yourself talking about your day, hey, that's a step in the right direction, especially if you are looking to do something outside of corporate America. Because ultimately, if you remain a secret, then you have no business because people have to know who you are. Even if no one's liking or commenting, it's crazy. People be like, "Oh, I watch all your videos." Never seen them like it, comment, or anything. And they'll be like,
Dude, it
"Oh, I
pisses
see
me
all your
off.
videos." I mean, yeah, but it's like it's still working. You're just not getting that reward, but you have to be willing to do something without a reward in order to really like break through, because if you do something and you get like that instantaneous reward, now you're doing it for potentially the wrong reasons.
100%. And not only that, like I want to share this really quick because I know that there's somebody listening to this right now who says, yeah, I feel like I have a message. I feel like I have something really important to share. And then they go, but who am I? Who am I to share that message? Who am I to buy a microphone? And who am I to get on a stage? Or who am I to write that book? There's actually a statistic. This is based off of just sheer math of the amount of people in the world, that at any given time, there are 75,000 people in this world that need to hear your message specifically from you. And how selfish of you not to show up. How selfish of you not to buy the microphone. How selfish of you not to write the book. And I think it's such a powerful statement because I know people go, hey, I've been through so much and I've overcome it and I want to share it, but who cares about my journey? Or, hey, Justin had a 1.7 GPA in high school. His mom battled opioids for 20 years. His dad was in jail. All signs pointed to no shot, and he's built this great thing. But like, your story might not be that crazy and that whatever, but you could be a woman who went through a terrible divorce and somebody needs to hear your message specifically from you. As a matter of fact, there's 75,000 people that need to hear it. So share your message, right? Share your journey. And those are the things that make the impact. And then that impact leads to opportunity.
Yeah. Opportunity. One of the things I like, this phrase, I don't know who said it, I can't remember, but it was opportunity is missed by most because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. I don't know who I've heard that as well, and I don't know who said it. But yeah, I mean, people miss out on that. Like they think they can just sit on their couch and the opportunity is just going to show up. That's just not the case.
Well, you can, but I mean, you could Twitch stream, you could play video games. I mean, you could take what you do every day, throw a camera on, and turn it into something. We have all have that ability. However, now even with AI, most people aren't even taking advantage of it just because who's gonna read my book or who's gonna listen or you
Yeah,
know
who's going to watch my live stream? You know what's crazy about that world? That's not just sitting around either. like the ones who do it at a high level, it's a lot of work. Like I know I have a friend who, he's a streamer and he does like YouTube videos and is playing video games, which is like everybody's dream, right? He's got 2 million subscribers on YouTube. That's what he does full time. I've known him since he was 19. He was trying to be a famous singer back then. Obviously, that didn't pan out. But he started playing video games online and it started to kind of grow. But like the amount of work that he puts in, not only just playing, right? Like, by the way, as you get older, it gets harder and harder to play video games. My 40th birthday, I bought myself a PlayStation 5. And just recently I started playing again. My wife was like, "You haven't played this in almost like a year." So I'm not even 41 yet. So that tells you how much I played it in the last year since I bought it. But
Hmm.
like the time playing and then editing and then uploading and then making sure your SEO is right, making sure your cover art is right. It's a lot of work. So I'll go back to, even if you are sitting in your underwear streaming, don't show people, but you can be under the camera in your underwear streaming. It's still a lot of work. It's still showing up consistently. All those things. It's all hard work. But you just got to be smart and you just got to figure out how to do it and keep showing up and trying different things.
Yeah, I got a Switch, and I got a like NBA 2K. It's like 20 or 21. It's an old one, but I'll just like be like, I need a work break. I'll play one quarter, just because
Yeah.
like it's fun just to play a quarter. It's good to give you like that little break. I'd rather do that than hop on social media and who knows what's gonna pop up on there. So, but that's super cool. What game do you play on there? PS5.
So it's so I bought it and I think I did Madden first. And then I played that for a little bit. I'm not a huge football. I'm a baseball guy, so I did Madden first, and then all sports games, and then at MLB,
Pirates? You a
the
Pirates guy?
show. What's that?
Pirates? You a Pirates guy?
No, Phillies. I'm on the other
Phillies.
side.
Okay, you. It could have
Yeah,
gone either way.
yeah, 50-50 chance. So then I did baseball for a while, and then I just stopped playing in general. And then just the other day, I was like, you know what? I haven't played this thing in a while. Let me download a new game, and I downloaded NBA 2K, the 25 or whatever. And so I've been playing that, which has been a lot of fun. Like I feel like the NBA games are the easiest to play because they're not. It doesn't take as long, right? So it's a quicker turnaround, right? Like to go from game to game. But I've always been, even since I was a kid, when these games started to get good, I'm more the strategist. Like I like the GM stuff. I like the signing the right players, making sure they're performing properly. Like I like that stuff better than actual gameplay. It's probably because I'm not very good at the gameplay. Like I've played Madden since Nintendo or whatever, and I still can't beat more than like the level above rookie. So like,
Oh man,
I'm just not good at it. I like the behind the scenes stuff.
we wouldn't have been friends then because I think in high school at one point I was like top 100 online for
Yeah,
Madden,
not me.
and it'd be crazy. I'd be like, hey, I'm gonna throw it to this guy, touchdown. It's just like nothing, but the game almost becomes not fun at that point. It's just like it's like you've kind of mastered it. But yeah, I mean that's just like anything. Sometimes you get bored of it. But being an entrepreneur, if you get really good at something, it is going to become boring, and you have to make sure that the boring work you continue to do it. Otherwise, you're gonna end up falling behind. So, what's the event that you're having? And then I know you got to run, so I'll let you go.
Yeah, man. So I'll kind of give a little backstory to it. So my event's called Growth Now Summit Live. My podcast is called The Growth Now Movement. Back in 2019 was the first year I did it. And the thought process behind it was I realized I had this amazing opportunity to sit down with game changers, people who want to make an impact in the world. And I get to pick their brain and I get to learn from them. And I was like, I know most people can't do this, especially at the level of the guests that I've been able to have on my show. And I
Mm.
was like, well, how can I take this and give this to other people? And so essentially what I did was I put together a live event that I call a day-long rock concert for entrepreneurs and forward thinkers and people looking to level up in all areas of their life. And it was a great success year one. I ended up selling it out, which is unheard of in like the live event space. But it was a lot of fun and it created connection, which is the main thing. I look at these events that we all get to go to, and the speakers are amazing. And a lot of times the speakers can be the draw. But what keeps you coming back is the experience that's created and the people you connect with. The last time I did an event was April of last year, so this year, so a couple months ago was the last time I did the event, and I realized that the room was filled with not just people who bought tickets because they listened to my podcast and they wanted to be there, but people who were on my podcast as guests bought tickets and showed up. Former keynote speakers bought tickets because they wanted to be in the room. And I realized that's what the movement and Growth Now movement has always meant. I never knew what it meant. It was a word that I throw in the back because I didn't like the word podcast in the podcast title. And I was like, this is the movement that I've been talking about. These people who I call friends, these people who I admire, these people who I look up to, these people who I learn from regularly, they bought a ticket and showed up and got in the room. And so we're doing it again, April 2026, in Westchester, PA, so right outside of Philadelphia. Rented out a theater. My goal is to sell it out. And so yeah, it's been an absolute blessing to be able to do that. And so it's for entrepreneurs who want to make a bigger impact and grow their income in the process. Leans into self development. How can you be a better person while you're building your business? We have panels and speakers and after parties and all the things in between, and it's a ton of fun, man. So whoever's interested, they can go to growthnowsummit.com. Tickets are super affordable. That was another thing I wanted to always make barrier of entry as simple as possible. And I always say this as a little asterisk. If you're listening to this and you feel a little lost, but you need to be in the room with the right people, and maybe the ticket is out of your price range, message me. We'll find a way to get you there. Because I want people who want to be impacted to be in that room, and people who also want to impact, right? That's why my friends and these people who have been on my podcast and have spoken in the past, they want to make an impact. They care. So they show up and they pour into people in the room. And so, yeah, it's growthnowsummit.com. They can check it out. And dude, Joshua, hopefully we'll see you there as well, since you want to get to more events. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, by April that could be doable. So yeah, we should be sleeping by then, or at least
At
better.
that point, what I say is reach out to the in-laws and say, hey, we need you to take the kids for a couple of days. Bring your wife with you and make it a weekend, right? Like make it a good time.
Yeah, her sister currently lives in Philly, so that would be a pretty easy ask.
There you go, man.
Sweet. Well, thanks for hopping on. We'll see everyone next time. Bye.
Dude, I appreciate you.